Hello, my name is Jacqueline Brixey, and my co-author on this work is Dr. David Traum. And this is our work on a Choctaw-English bilingual chatbot named Masheli. The motivation behind this work is that language learners need to be able to practice with a partner in order to gain conversational fluency. However, language learners for an endangered or a threatened language may not have access to fluent speakers with whom they can practice. This may be due to geographical constraints, or there may simply not be very many fluent speakers to practice with. So we propose a text-based chatbot with whom these learners can practice with. And we built a chatbot to support the language Choctaw. So briefly, what is Choctaw? Choctaw is the name of an American indigenous tribe, and it is also the name of a language spoken by that tribe. In the 2010 census, there were approximately 200,000 individuals who identified as being Choctaw, making it the fourth largest tribal group in the US by population. Historically, the tribe lived in Mississippi and Alabama, shown in red on the map. There are three federally recognized tribes within the tribal group. There's the Jinnah Band of Choctaw Indians who live in Louisiana. There's the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, and then there's the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Within the 200,000 population, there's approximately 10,000 fluent speakers. Ethnologue classifies the language as being threatened in that there are declining numbers of fluent speakers over time. The language belongs to the Muskogean language family. Other members of this language family include Chickasaw, Alabama, and Muskogee. You may have seen Choctaws in the news recently. In the 1800s, the Choctaw people sent money as aid to the Irish people during the potato famine. Now, more recently, during the pandemic, the Irish people have repaid that generosity by sending money to help fight the virus with the Choctaws. Why am I interested in this language of all the languages in the world? This is my grandmother. She was Choctaw, and we are citizens of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. So for the chatbot, we implemented it to be a conversational partner. We wanted it to keep the conversation flowing. It is not intended to be a tutoring agent, so it does not evaluate users' language and it does not evaluate the user's performance. The chatbot is bilingual. It can respond in and to English and Choctaw user input. It will respond in the same language as the user's last input. So if the last input was English, it will also respond in English. And then a unique feature about the chatbot is that it can repeat its last utterance in the other language if the user requests this. So if the user finds that they didn't quite understand something in Choctaw, then they can ask for a translation. The knowledge base of the chatbot comes from a corpus called Chaco. We selected stories from this corpus. All 17 stories are in English and in Choctaw. And all of the stories we selected are about animals. Some are parables, other are folklore stories, and then finally some are children's stories. Here we have an example conversation with the chatbot to show some of its capabilities. First, the user writes in Choctaw, "Hello," and the chatbot responds in Choctaw, "Hello, I'm doing well." Next, the user writes in English, "What is your name?" And the chatbot responds in English, "My name is Masheli. This means fair sky in Choctaw. What is yours?" The user responds, "My name is Lena" in English, and the chatbot responds, "I am happy to meet you." Then the user writes, "Where do you live?" And the chatbot responds in English, "I live in Mississippi." Now the user says, "I want to have a story about a deer." And the chatbot responds in Choctaw with a story about a deer. Now the user asks for that story to be repeated in English, which the chatbot does. The backend of the chatbot is NPC Editor. NPC Editor has a response selection classifier that is trained on linked question and answer pairs. So we can see questions on the left side of the screen here linked in green to responses on the right. There are multiple answer or multiple questions that are linked to one answer to accommodate different ways of asking for the same, making the same request. It also accommodates different potential spellings in Choctaw. The NPC editor also contains the dialogue manager for the chatbot. There are two features in the dialogue manager that I'd like to share. So first, if the user submits multiple non-story type requests, so things like what is the weather or what is your favorite sandwich, after 3 of these types of requests, the chatbot will make a suggestion to talk about stories that it knows in order to redirect the conversation. Secondly, in order to switch between languages, each response has a tag, which is shown in the external ID column. The dialogue manager keeps track of its last said utterance. So then when the user makes a request to have its last utterance repeated, then it will return the opposite type. So if the last utterance by the chatbot was 01 donkey, which is highlighted in green, then after the repeat request, the chatbot will return 01 donkey E. There is no language detection module in the chatbot. As I explained previously, the response selection classifier is trained on linked question and answer pairs. So in the training data, Choctaw questions are linked to Choctaw responses and vice versa. This is how the chatbot will respond in Choctaw to a Choctaw input and vice versa. Here, I'd like to demonstrate how the selection threshold works, or how a specific response is selected based upon user input. So the user has input a novel utterance. What we see in the first 3 is that these responses are scored above a selection threshold. The selection threshold is established during the training process. And because all of these are above the threshold and are equal amounts, the dialogue manager will randomly select any of these because they are all viable responses. To evaluate the chatbot, we did 2 tasks. First, we conducted a pilot study with speakers in a community language class in Los Angeles. And secondly, we did several tests on the chatbot. In the pilot study, 4 participants interacted with the chatbot. These participants all had different levels of fluency, from beginner to fluent. All the participants asked for at least 1 story, and 2 asked for more than 1 story. All the participants interacted for 4 or more turns with the chatbot. The shortest interaction was around 5 minutes, and the longest was 15. In the 15-minute long interaction, the user spent a lot of time reviewing vocabulary that the chatbot said. 2 participants spoke only in Choctaw to the system, and they only used the repeat function to see how it would work, not because they really wanted the translation. The other 2 participants, who are both beginner level, spoke mostly in English to the chatbot and then used the repeat function so that they could see that same answer in Choctaw. All participants reported that it was an enjoyable experience to interact with the chatbot. However, one critique was that getting the complete story in 1 turn was very uncomfortable to read. Next, we wanted to see how the chatbot would respond to language learning language behaviors. So one behavior is code switching. Now at the dialogue turn level, the chatbot is able to manage code switching, which is switching between 2 languages. However, we wanted to see what would happen when there was code switching within a turn. So both English and Choctaw in 1 input. And this is a very typical behavior for language learners. What's shown in the conversation in the screenshot is the user is trying to get a story about a deer. However, there's at least some English and Choctaw. It's unclear why the chatbot responded in English in this final turn. So it will require additional testing to understand which word or how much English is required for the chatbot to respond in one or the other language. A second thing that we wanted to test with the chatbot was how it would respond to language errors. So language learners typically have grammatical and spelling errors in their language. In each of the turns shown in the conversation here, the user has at least one spelling and one grammatical error. So there might be a preposition missing, or there might be a word order problem. And in all of the turns, the user is asking to hear a story about a specific animal. However, the chatbot is unable to respond to any of these inputs. All of the responses are off-topic responses. So in future work, we will investigate methods to better cope with language errors and code switching. And we leave it to future work to investigate any learning gains that users might experience from interacting with Chatbot. And with that, we thank you very much for your attention, and we'd be happy to take any questions.